You don't traffic 1,000 children and only arrest 2 people. Think about that for a moment. Does anyone really believe Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were the only ones? Congresswoman Maline Dean stood on the floor of Congress and cut through years of excuses, half-truths and silence with a single line that millions of Americans have been thinking. Enough is enough. The cover-ups, the delays, the secrecy, this has gone on too long. Because the truth is hiding in one place, too many people in power don't want us to look the financial records. Those documents don't bend to politics. They don't lie. They show who funded Epstein, who enabled him, who looked the other way. And once you follow the money, you see the names, the institutions, the powerful figures who thought they were untouchable. That's why Dean's demand is shaking Washington, because transparency threatens to expose everything.
And for yielding, I thank you for your comments. I associate myself with your comments. And to the gentlewomen from Florida, thank you for your work on this for years. And thank you for just correcting a piece of the record. There's so much more to it than that. Mr. Chairman, I understand that you are upset that this lays upon our table. I wish it didn't. I wish people long ago. I would ask you to allow me to complete my statement. I think the gentlewoman a moment ago spoke to that nonsense. This lays at our table now. The victims were here today. I wish they didn't have to be here. But for you to suggest that we were somehow using them, these women came forward. Some have come forward in the past, some with the courage and the pain on their faces. It's so disrespectful that someone would say, well, doggone it, you didn't deal with it. People have tried to deal with it for a long time. I wish the Department of Justice had dealt with it. I wish Florida had dealt with it. I wish he had not been given that sweetheart deal. And I wish that the names had not been covered up of who participated. Remember, the Attorney General, she had the list on her desk, and then it evaporated. It is known who is in that list. This Department of Justice knows who's in that list. Mr. Trump knows a lot about what happened in this. Somebody's trying to cover it up. 33,000 pages that were released, we all know, are a drop in the bucket compared to what actually is known and has been investigated when there's 1,000 victims. It's not just 2 people who were culpable. We show no other predators. There's no other names being revealed. There's a lot of people who know an awful lot. There was tremendous depth of investigation. But I want to end with this. This is entirely about the victims. And you re-victimize them when you say, well, you didn't do enough and you didn't do enough. And why didn't you do something that year? It's on us. It is on us to do something about it. We are Congress. And I suggested to you, she said, survivors will do it for survivors. Let's stand with the survivors. Let's not leave it on them. Let's not say, okay, DOJ failed, this administration failed, Congress failed. Why would we want to be in these jobs if we don't seek justice for victims so grievously harmed? Think if this was your daughter. I have 4 granddaughters. Think if it was one of yours. Would you be content saying, you know what? They didn't do enough 4 years ago, so I don't really care about this. This is entirely about the victims, and they have been lost here. I don't know why you sit contentedly allowing them to be lost. I ask for support for my amendment. I yield back to the gentlelady with great thanks.
When Maline Dean rose in Congress, she wasn't just giving another floor speech, she was drawing a line in the sand. Her amendment was simple but explosive. No funds for the Treasury Department could be used to block the release of Epstein's financial records. Think about what that means. Hidden in those suspicious activity reports, sirs, are the transactions that expose how Epstein's network really worked, who moved the money, which banks looked the other way, who was quietly profiting while victims were being exploited. Dean's amendment cut straight to the core. For years committees have stalled, files have been locked away, and the public has been left in the dark. But sirs are different. They're the raw trail of numbers that connect predators to enablers, and enablers to institutions. Dean's demand wasn't just paperwork, it was a direct challenge to the system that has protected the powerful. And if those records come out, the truth will no longer be deniable. If you want to uncover the true size of Epstein's empire, you don't just study the headlines or the court transcripts, you follow the money, because money leaves fingerprints. Every wire transfer, every offshore account, every unexplained deposit tells a story. And unlike testimony that can be spun, or memories that can fade, financial records don't forget. They don't lie. That's why Dean's demand for access to suspicious activity reports is so critical. These are the alerts banks file when something looks abnormal, when a transaction raises red flags that can't be ignored. And Epstein's finances were full of them. Massive transfers, unusual movements between accounts, and transactions linked to some of the world's most prominent businessmen and institutions. The question is simple: why were these warnings ignored for so long? Who looked the other way when those reports crossed their desks? And just as important, who benefited? Because when billions of dollars move through a predator's network unchecked, it doesn't just happen by accident. Someone allowed it. Someone profited from it, and someone made sure it stayed hidden. And once you start pulling that thread, the fabric of secrecy begins to unravel. While lawmakers argue over amendments and files, something far more powerful has begun to take shape outside the halls of Congress. The survivors themselves are stepping in. They are tired of waiting, tired of being told to be patient while politicians stall. And now they're taking matters into their own hands. One survivor, Lisa Phillips, stood at the Capitol steps and revealed something shocking. She said survivors have begun quietly compiling a confidential list of Epstein associates, people they say were involved in abuse. Imagine the weight of that statement. The very people who were trafficked, groomed, and silenced are now forced to investigate their own abusers because the system won't. That alone shows just how broken the response to this scandal has been. Survivors aren't just reliving trauma by telling their stories, they're gathering evidence, building records, and keeping the pressure alive. They don't trust that Congress will protect them, so they are protecting each other. And the chilling part: these survivors may reveal connections and names the public has never seen, names that institutions have worked overtime to keep hidden. When survivors take the lead, it isn't just testimony, it's a direct challenge to the silence that has protected predators for decades. The truth is, Epstein and Maxwell were never the whole story. They were the faces the public saw, the names splashed across headlines. But if you believe they were the only two people responsible for an operation that spanned decades and crossed continents, you're missing the bigger picture. Networks like this don't run on just two individuals. They run on layers of recruiters, financiers, protectors, and enablers who made sure the machine kept moving. Maline Dean's words hit so hard because they captured that betrayal perfectly. You don't traffic 1,000 children and only arrest 2 people. That's not just unlikely, it's impossible. Somewhere out there are others who played key roles, who may have gone on to harm even more victims while justice stalled. What's even more disturbing is how this narrative has been allowed to shrink, as if 2 arrests wrapped up the case neatly. Survivors know better, lawmakers know better. And the financial records prove better. This wasn't the whole iceberg, it was just the tip. And underneath lies a network that can't stay buried forever. The deeper you look into Epstein's world, the clearer it becomes that he wasn't operating in isolation. He surrounded himself with some of the most powerful businessmen, politicians, and cultural figures on the planet. And the question has never been whether they knew him, it's what they were doing in his orbit. Were they investing in his ventures? Were they benefiting from his connections? Or was something much darker at play? Rumors have long suggested that Epstein's empire wasn't just about money or influence, it was about leverage. He had access, he had secrets, and he had a way of drawing people into his web. Some say that's what made him untouchable for so long. Because if he had compromising information on the rich and powerful, then protecting him became a way of protecting themselves. But here's the key. Until the financial records are fully released, those questions remain unanswered. Every unexplained transaction, every offshore account, every wire transfer could reveal who enabled him, who covered for him, and who profited from one of the darkest networks in modern history. And that's why the push for transparency isn't just about the past, it's about finally breaking through the silence of the powerful. At the heart of this fight is one principle: transparency. Without it, predators hide in plain sight, survivors are dismissed, and the cycle of abuse continues. Maline Dean's amendment wasn't about politics or partisanship, it was about breaking through the walls of secrecy that have shielded powerful people for far too long. Because transparency doesn't protect institutions, it protects victims. The survivors who came forward aren't asking for sympathy. They're asking for truth. They want every file, every report, every financial record laid bare so no one can pretend this was just the work of two people. They want accountability that goes beyond headlines and prison sentences, and they know that sunlight is the only way to disinfect the lies that have kept this story buried. Public outrage is the one tool that can push Congress and agencies to act. When the pressure builds, politicians can't keep ignoring the demands for answers. That's why transparency matters. It forces action where silence has failed. And in this case, silence isn't neutral, it's deadly. Because every day the truth is hidden, predators remain protected. Survivors deserve better. They deserve honesty, they deserve justice, and they deserve to see every secret finally brought into the light. Maline Dean's message could not be clearer. You don't traffic 1,000 children and only arrest 2 people. That line should echo in every chamber of Congress and in every home that still believes in justice, because this case isn't closed, and it isn't finished. Survivors know it, lawmakers know it, and the financial records hold the proof. But here's the reality: none of this will come to light unless the public demands it. Silence protects predators, pressure forces transparency. When survivors stood at the Capitol, they weren't just telling their stories, they were sounding an alarm. They were saying, help us make sure this never happens again. The fight now is not just about what happened in the past, it's about preventing new victims in the future. If the money trail stays hidden, the network stays protected. But if it's exposed, accountability follows. That's why Dean's amendment matters, and that's why your voice matters. So don't let this story fade. Share it, talk about it, demand action. Because justice won't come from silence, it will only come if we refuse to let the truth stay buried. Survivors deserve nothing less than full transparency, and it's on all of us to make sure they get it.